Okay, you're
Yeah.
welcome to this legal surgeries. Thank you so much. Hi, Zara. I just saw you. Thank you so much for joining today. I hope you're doing fine. All right, so we're all welcome again to the surgeries today. This is the 8th week of this surgery, and today is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be slightly different. On behalf of Time to Heal, I want to welcome everyone who has been training us so far, everyone who has been helping in facilitating this legal surgery, all the members of the legal support team. Special thanks to you all. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kamina, for always coming as well. Thank you, Talatu. Today we decided to take a different approach today. We just want to go through question and answers. I think I'm receiving a message from Zara that she's not sure whether I can hear her. If you can hear me, no, I cannot hear you. But it's good to see you too. Thank you so much. She's saying that it's good to see all of us.
I can't hear her.
Yes. So hopefully the mic works later to hear your voice, Zara. Thank you so much for your message. So today we just decided to take a different approach slightly. Today we'll be having what we call question and answer session, generally on any topic of interest or any area of interest. The idea is to bring it home, to bring it back to what matters to us more. So the way the session is going to be, we do a little bit of recap of what we have done so far from the beginning of the surgery, and then we'll have time to discuss anything and then ask questions on the law and domestic abuse. So feel free, you can be the teacher, you could be the one answering the questions, and you could be the one also asking the question, I beg your pardon. So once more, we're welcome to today. Just to mention that we've got apologies from Holly. Unavoidably, she couldn't make today's surgery. Also, Karuna sends her apologies, but she did mention that she may be able to join because of where she is right now. She's doing some things. So just to extend our thanks to them as well. And before we started, we did mention that it was a tragic event that happened at Stonehaven. We want to officially, on behalf of Time to Heal and everyone here, send our condolences to the families of the victims of the train landslide case that happened just a few days ago. We really pass our condolences to them. I would pray that God gives them the fortitude to bear the huge and immense loss. So having said that, we are going to be going through the whole thing. So this surgery started a few weeks ago. And the aim, like I mentioned earlier, is to ensure that the aim is to bring the law, what the role of the law in supporting and empowering victims and survivors of domestic abuse. We wanted to bring up topical issues, things that we can discuss and hear ideas, presentations, and how the law can better support the victims and survivors. So we've done that for today is the 8th time. So we hope that the topics so far have been very, very tremendously helpful. For me, I've learned a lot. I want to thank everyone who has presented so far: Holly, Karuna, Zara, Ting, Kieran, Zoe, everyone, all the members of the legal support team. Those topics have been very, very immense. I've been going through them to study by myself, to learn and understand things better, and as a lawyer as well, to see how we can utilize the machinery of the law to help and support victims and survivors of domestic abuse. So, just as a way of recap, we started the week 1 when we started this legal surgery. The first topic was Domestic Abuse Act 2018. How the law can support victims better. What were the provisions in Scotland? So Holly took us through the Domestic Abuse Act, Domestic Abuse Scotland Act of 2018, and she delved into the provisions. She went through the provisions to, extrapolate what the law defines as abuse, to understand what the provisions of the law are. So she defined an abuse, what abuse is in the law, what the expectations of the law is in terms of how can you prove an abusive conduct? What are the things that the law expects of someone who is seeking redress to prove? So she did mention that the Act, the 2018 Act in Scotland, went more extensively. Before the Act was enacted, domestic abuse was practically viewed as, physical. Excuse me, I think someone is joining us now. So yes, so before the Act was enacted in 2018, domestic abuse was only limited to physical, physical and sexual, abuse. But the 2018 Act introduced further dimensions. According to the Act, domestic abuse now includes, and it recognizes psychological abuse, extreme coercion and control suffered by the victims. So it is important to bear in mind that though before the Act, abuse was limited to physical and sexual assault, but under the Domestic Abuse Scotland Act of 2018, we now have a definition that covers both psychological impact, extreme coercion, and control suffered by the victim. So that was the take-home message, the core thing in that presentation. She did also mention that there are 3 conditions that you need to meet, or 3 requirements to prove an abusive conduct. She mentioned that 1, there was a cause of behavior. There has to be a cause of behavior. Number 2, that it was committed against the partner. And number 3, that the perpetrator intended to cause harm or was reckless as to whether they are causing harm, basically. So these were the 3 conditions that any person seeking redress in court we have to meet before remedy can be given. And then she also mentioned very importantly that the test to be applied on this requirement is the reasonable person's test. Whatever that definition is, the lawyers will be the one to interpret what a reasonable person is. But yeah, so the test will be a reasonable person's test. So, she said that an abusive behavior, she went a little bit further to define what an abusive behavior was. An abusive behavior encompasses controlling, regulating, or monitoring a partner day by day. You're monitoring your partner's day by day activity. This also constitutes an abusive behavior. He said depriving or restricting a partner of her freedom or his freedom, is counted as the behavior. And then the third one, that frightening, humiliating, the humiliating, frightening, or pushing your partner, such as insulting your partner as well. I beg your pardon. All this could also constitute the behavior that the law defines. So it's important to remember that in that presentation, in the week 1 presentation, we defined what an abusive behavior was according to the Act, the Domestic Abuse Scotland Act. And then we went into the 3 conditions to be met. And then that the behavior could encompass not just physical activity, physical abuse, but when you're controlling, when you're regulating, when you're monitoring your partner, when you humiliated the person, depriving him or her of the basic necessities, or even restricting the freedom, constitutes a behavior within the context of the 2018 Act. And then finally, she mentioned that forced marriage, though forced marriage could also be considered as an abuse, there is a regulation in Scotland that specifically governs that. We have the Forced Marriage Act of 2011. So it may be worthwhile that that act is also had recourse to when you are forced into marriage. Nobody should ever be forced to go into any marriage at all. So it is against the law, simply put, to force someone to go into marriage. So that's a sort of high-level summary of week 1 of our surgery. We dealt with the Domestic Abuse Scotland Act, defining what an abuse is, the 3 conditions to be met, and what behavior generally constitutes as required by the law. Then we went into week 2. Week 2 topic was how the law can better protect victims and survivors of domestic abuse. And this presentation was given by Karuna. Karuna was the one that made the presentation. So she basically also referenced the Domestic Abuse Scotland Act 2018. She defined, just like Holly did, what an abusive behavior is within the context of the act. And she went further to also highlight some of the challenges that victims and survivors of domestic abuse face in trying to seek redress in court. One of the challenges rather is that they are oftentimes faced with emotional and financial abuse. They have financial and emotional challenge. The rigor, the emotional stress and rigor of going to court is a challenge. Number two challenge is the hidden victim. We have the challenge of identifying the hidden victim, especially if the abuse is not physical, if the abuse is inward, and the hidden victim. The victims could even be the children, and because they are babies, they are children, and they can't express themselves very well. So what do you do? What does the law do about the hidden victims? She also mentioned about the fleeing abuse, legal aid as a challenge, the refugee, and then she went further to highlight other challenges, BME background issues, and disabled people. How does the law support this category of people as well? So these were some of the challenges she highlighted as facing, these were some of the challenges that she mentioned that could potentially hinder the victim or the survivor from getting real justice. And then she now went further to give some suggestions, what the implications are for policymakers. What should policymakers be aware? What should they do to better make the system support the victims? One, she said that financial and emotional abuse need to be articulated properly, that the law should take cognizance of financial and, emotional abuse. The law legislators and policymakers should take cognizance of that. Number two, that policies on benefits such as housing, debt, and all that need to better consider the victims. The victims should be considered properly when talking about benefits and the rest. So those were the things she mentioned as some of the implications for the policymakers. Number three, she mentioned as well that the Ministry of Justice should review the evidence requirements and financial aids, financial contributions to legal aid. Because at times that could be a big challenge, the evidence requirement. If the evidence is not readily there, and the law basically relies on evidence, he who asserts must prove. If you assert a particular position, you must prove that actually happened. So evidence, the evidentiary burden and the requirements could be a challenge to victims. Of course, one has to be careful as well that you don't want to convict without evidence. You don't want to put the wrong person in jail. So the law should take cognizance of that. And finally, she made other suggestions, but the last one I want to mention is that she mentioned that I'm trying to get the system where that the government should monitor. The government must monitor the impact of abuse, the impact of single payment policies on the domestic abuse victim. The government should monitor the impact from time to time. It's not enough to just render immediate support, but we should monitor consistently the impact of such abuse on the victims. Those were some of the highlights of week 2 surgery, and the presentation was how the law can better protect the victims and survivors of domestic abuse. That was presented by Karuna. Then on week 3, during week 3, we went a little bit into the system. We went to look inward to see what support is available for victims. And we discussed the Citizens Advice Bureau, what their role is and how they can support the victims, what services are available for victims and survivors. And that was delivered by one of the staff, Zoe Melo, dealt with that. She went into details of what the Citizens Advice Bureau does, who they are, the activities they do, and how, and the support they render to generally the public and the victims of abuse as well. She did mention that one thing to remember, that the services of the Citizens Advice Bureau are free. The services are free. You don't have to pay. So it's important to bear in mind that the services are free. You walk into the office, or you can give them a call and just ask questions on whichever area that you are interested in. So it's very important to bear that in mind, that the services are free. She highlighted that confidentiality is guaranteed, because one of the concerns for victims, because of the nature of these cases, confidentiality is very paramount. Some people want to maintain confidentiality. So it's good to hear that Citizens Advice Bureau has high-level confidentiality according to the presentation, and that impartiality is also guaranteed, independence, it is accessible, and they also seek to empower the victims. So it's important that we know that support is available even at the Citizens Advice Bureau. She highlighted again that with the current trend occasioned by COVID-19 lockdown, they are exploring how technology can be better deployed to support the society. That's a good thing. So how technology can be better deployed, and it can be very helpful. Technology, good use of technology can help in supporting victims and survivors. So that's a kind of summary of the presentation on week 3, which was on the role of the Citizens Advice Bureau in supporting and providing providing support to victims and survivors of domestic abuse. And then the 4th week, on the 4th week, we looked at trauma-informed practice. That was very, very, very interesting, a very interesting aspect of the discussion. Zara was the one that did presentation. In fact, from that day, I almost call her Dr. Zara, because she went deep beyond beyond law. She went even to the medical aspect. I really learned a lot. So she looked at the trauma-informed practice. Those who are rendering legal support, rendering services to the victims and other clients, is it possible that they are also undergoing a trauma? And yes, it is true, it's possible. It's been an aspect, according to her, that has been overlooked, but it's beginning to gain traction right now. She defined trauma as a stressful or life-threatening event or accident which someone may be experienced, such as emotional shock. So such an emotional shock is part of it. And then she highlighted that event may affect the individual emotionally, mentally, or physically. So any stressful or life-threatening situation, event, or accident which someone experiences and has the potential of affecting them physically, mentally, and emotionally. I beg your pardon, Zara, if I didn't get that right. Please, when the time comes, we can contribute as well. But that was the sort of definition that she gave. And she also looked at the issue of trauma and the brain. How does it affect the brain? How does it affect the body? That's where she went medical. She mentioned about the three parts of the brain, the neocortex, which I think talks about the logic, the part of the brain that deals with logic. She mentioned the limbic system, which handles the emotional part of our system. And then she also touched the reptilian complex, which I think is about reproduction. And yeah, I think that's about the point. So it's important that we looked at trauma, how people are affected by trauma, those who are practicing, who are rendering help, especially lawyers and others who are in position of delivering service to victims and survivors. Could they also be affected? Yes. She highlighted a principle called vicarious trauma, which is transferable. It's something to watch out, that as a service deliverer, you don't get I'm looking for the right word. You don't put yourself in a situation where you yourself is traumatized. So vicarious trauma is possible, as she explained. Then re-traumatization is also a thing that needs to be watched out against. Re-traumatization, where a victim has received help, and after a while, the traumatizing incidents happens again and the victim relapses to trauma. So these are the things to watch out. and to see how the law can better regulate these things so that accurate support, the right support mechanisms are put in place for those who are delivering the services. Then she did mention how to support. How can we support people in this category? How can support be delivered? She mentioned that yes, we need to have knowledge. Knowledge is important. We need to develop trust. We need to understand choice. Give them the choice. Give the people you're rendering the services choice. Let them be in charge. Create a safe space, and then seek to empower them, and also seek to collaborate with these people. So these are some of the things she highlighted. When the time comes, everybody, we can double check our notes and then also pick out the areas that touched your interest so much. But that's a kind of high level summary of what we discussed during week 4, which was trauma-informed practice by Zara. Then during week 5, topic was delivered by Karen Wood, and it was basically on reporting and proving domestic abuse. How do you report domestic abuse? And how do you prove domestic abuse? He also referenced the law, the Domestic Abuse Act, and the rest. And he gave some practical tips on how to report abuse. One, you can call 999. You can just dial 999. You could also press 55 on your mobile phone. And then when your conversation is going on, it will automatically be captured. So then you could register with the emergency SMS, register with that. So it's important to know that there are tips, there are helps available. And then he also mentioned that domestic violence disclosure scheme, grants victim what they call the right to ask. It's very important. The right to ask is the right to ask the police or the security agencies to inquire whether your partner has a violent past. So the right to ask is there. So if you're going into a relationship, if you wish to go into a relationship or marriage, so you could actually check the background of the person you wish to go into a relationship with to see whether he or she has a tendency of being violent, or in actual fact, whether he has actually been violent before. So the right to ask is there and is guaranteed under the Domestic Violence Disclosure Scheme, also called CLARE's law. So you can also utilize, if you want to, how to apply for this scheme. If you want to apply for the right to ask, you could simply call 101, and then, or you could just walk into the police station and you'll be able to, kickstart the process. Or you could also just speak to a policeman on the street, and they'll be able to support you. Then finally, he touched on the proofs, the ways you can prove domestic abuse. He said, you could keep your tapes, statements, witnesses, CCTV footage, calls, photos, medical evidence and statement, the police report and observation. For example, if the police comes into the house and sees that the house, the chairs have been upturned, everywhere is in tattered, everywhere broken equipment at home, those could also serve as evidence to show that an abuse has taken place or someone has been in an abusive situation. And he finally mentioned that abuse on the that was the summary basically of the presentation during week 5. Then during week 6 and week 7, we dealt with a different topic. It was an abuse on the electronic media, what to know and how to regulate. Week 6, we dealt with what cyber harassment is, what are the things that happen on the media. So it is possible, we established that it is possible for someone to be abused electronically. Cyberbullying is very common. Examples were given, cases were given as well, and we should watch. And this has a negative impact on the victim, that we should look at that properly. That topic was delivered by Ting Liu. That was a wonderful topic. That topic is really, really interesting. It gained a lot of traction. People were interested. Then in week 7, she now went specifically to deal with how to protect children, because these are vulnerable people and they utilize social media a lot, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the rest. How can they be protected? That was the focus of week 7 of that topic. Ting is also the one who handled that topic. It's interesting to know that this topic is going to be reenacted during our ICOVA. ICOVA is our international conference on violence against women. So it's coming up on 11th to 14th of September. So please put that date in your diary. Hopefully we get to see that. This topic is going to be discussed again because we live in a digital age. Almost everything is done online. So we need to make sure that we utilize the good aspects of the media, of the electronic media, and then check the negative aspects of the electronic media. So that's a sort of high-level summary of what we have discussed so far and how far we've gone with our topics so far in our legal surgery. So I will more or less open the floor to everyone to, if you have any of the topics that you're interested in, something that you weren't clear about, or you want to add more, you want to fleshing out some of the things, or even give practical examples, I would like to give you the opportunity and let's hear from us. If I was wrong as well in describing this whole thing in the summary, if I got it wrong, please, this is the time to correct me. Does anyone have questions or contributions?
Yeah.
All right, Kamina.
Yes, I'm just, you remember just going from last week?
Yes.
It's just that something came up this week that I don't know if team can answer. It was how to trace online the troll or the bully, you know, the person that's making your life so bad. Because I saw JLS's little boy, he has is it Instagram or something like that, and a horrible thing came up, although they control what comes on to his side. Now, there's one thing that I know they're going to report it to the police, they're going to take it to the government, but they haven't traced who said these horrible things to the child online. So I don't know if Teen knows, how do you actually trace that person that is saying such horrible things and doing horrible bullying things to a child online?
Thank you so much.
Well, to trace somebody who doing this kind of things, usually it's how to say, it's on the police side, and you use like technological means to achieve it, and it's like finding your IP address or something else like this. And yeah, it's by technological means, and usually because it's related to people's privacy, you need to like to check the law if it's allowed, and you need to have a conversation with the police to see how to implement it, because it's related to people's privacy. Yeah, it's related to the police.
So it's the IP address that gives you that person that's committing that crime to the child.
You can find the person through the IP address. It's like your computer or something. It's have a special IP address, and you can find it.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ting, for that. Thank you, Kamina. I hope that answered that question. So yes, does anyone have further questions or contributions or addition? Maybe I should ask. It's just to see whether we got those presentations that were done. So what in Scotland, what are the things that we are expected to prove? I mean, to show, sorry, the things that we are expected to show to prove an abusive conduct. What are the requirements of the law? What are the things that the law expects? Does anyone want to help in that? Okay, I think I highlighted that earlier, that in Scotland, that was during the presentation given by Holly. Holly did mention that the requirements of the law, the expectations of the law is that 3 conditions have to be fulfilled. Number 1, that there was a cause of behavior that happened over time. So, and that number 2, that it was committed against a partner. So an abusive conduct has to be committed against a partner. Now, in the eyes of the law, the partner is not just a married couple. It could also be, those who are in relationship who haven't yet married. And so that's, but it has to be someone that has to be committed against a partner. So, and then number 3, the perpetrator intended to cause harm or was reckless as to whether that he or she was causing harm. So these are the 3 major requirements of the law to establish an abuse or an abusive conduct against someone. So it's important to remember that, but these are, because these points are stated in the law, and that's the most time the reason why cases fail or succeed is based on proof and evidence. If you're not able to establish those things, it becomes difficult to prove your case. So I guess the question ultimately is, what happens when a victim is unable to establish these elements, but indeed he or she suffered an abusive situation? What should the law do? What could be given to the person? Does it just end there? Is there no support that can be given again? I don't know whether that question makes sense at all, because at times it does happen that you're not able to prove, maybe due to 1 or 2 circumstances, you're not able to keep the evidence. And indeed the person was, subjected to an abusive conduct. What can be done beyond that inability to prove an abusive situation? Does anyone want to give an attempt to answer? Okay, it seems that was understood as well. And the other things to highlight that we discussed was making sure that we keep records. Records should be kept. Keep records of tapes, emails, texts, witnesses, CCTV footage. You could apply for that. Calls and videos, so you don't delete these things unnecessarily. Keep them, especially once you start suspecting that you're being subjected to an abuse. Don't forget, from the definition I was given, Holly highlighted it very well, that it's not just when you are physically abused or sexually abused. There are several ways of proving abuse. I mean, that abuse could take place. For example, when the person's behavior is controlling, how do you prove the controlling behavior? When someone is monitoring all your dealings, all your activities, and your day-to-day activities, they're depriving you or restricting your freedom. You're depriving you of the basic necessities of life. If you're deprived of food, or you're deprived of the basic things at home, these are ways of also establishing an abusive situation. You're being frightened, or you're humiliated in the public. You're humiliated not just in the public, and all that. So you're subjected to degrading situations. So these are the things to bear in mind, that the law has grown beyond physical or sexual abuse. Psychological impact is very crucial when trying to define an abuse.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just say a few things. Obviously not talking from a legal standpoint, but
yes.
In working with children, part of safeguarding them is to believe them. I don't know what the law practice is or the stand is, but I would just say that to a reasonable extent, people should be believed, and support offered, because these things lead to trauma, like we already established, and we all react differently to trauma. It could lead to extreme situations. So in order to save that person from tipping over psychologically or mentally, the person should be given support if they have any complaints about domestic abuse. Because for some people, the difference between life, and it could be life or death, you know. Um, I have experienced a situation where I was trying to get help in my own personal life, and nobody was picking up their calls when I don't remember if my kids were in the car, but then when it happened, they were just maybe 1 and 1.5 or nearly 2. So I had babies with, I don't know if I had them with me. And with hindsight, even though I'm not somebody that would consider suicide or anything, but I now, with hindsight, see that if anybody who is unstable or did not handle that traumatic experience properly, I with me, I was trying to reach people that I needed support from, and they didn't answer me. So I parked somewhere. I cried my heart home. I can't say for sure if the children were with me, like I said, but I'm just trying to give a picture of what could happen if somebody were really going they didn't get help. And that traumatic situation was not handled, you know. So I would say that they should be reasonable. They should, as you know, reasonably, accepted that the person may have gone through abuse. They should be given support, and maybe during the course of that support, if there's falsehood in their claims, it can be. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because it's usually like you were asking that, how would somebody be believed? You know, these are not things. It would always be your word against the perpetrator. And if it's going to be like that, and it's sometimes difficult to prove, then we have to find a way of believing people and accepting and just giving support where they are looking for support. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for that contribution. I think that was very, very spot on. That's very spot on. You highlighted that people should be given support. It's critical. Support is very critical in every system because the person is a victim. And at that point in time, the first thing to do is to ensure that the person is given support. And you gave a practical example. Support could be as simple as picking calls when you're being called, as simple as listening to the victim when he or she is making a statement and providing the necessary rescue system, putting the rescue system in place before going into facts and the rest. And you made a very valid point that it will always be the victim against the perpetrator. So support is key. You highlighted another point again that we need to develop the culture of belief. We need to be able to believe when statements are given from from the victim point of view, especially when you're seeing clear evidence, you're seeing marks. If someone comes to you and you can see bruises on her face, and you can see, even if you don't see physical bruises, you can see signs of emotional depression, you know, and it's written all over. At that point in time, that is reasonable belief. One has to know that something has gone wrong somewhere. And if someone is looking very shabby, you know, and unkept and deprived, these are signs that you don't need to, you know, be so critical not to render support. So support is very key. I absolutely agree with you. More also because when support is not given, this is just my thought coming in now, support is not given, most times people may resort to self-help, and it's not right when you leave people to resort to self-help because it may have domino effect and consequences may linger and all that. So it is very important that when victims come, we are able to render support immediately and then now begin to now know what and what not to do to unravel what happened. Thank you very much for that contribution. Does anyone have any further contribution from any of the topics from week 1 to week 7? We've touched various topics. And does anyone have anything to add? For example, at times we don't talk so much on the impact, about the impact on the children, especially the vulnerable ones who are there witnessing these things. how do you know the extent of trauma that these children are going through? How do we determine the long-term effect and impact on them if they live under that kind of situation? What does the law protect the children enough? I know that there are provisions for the children. We've dealt with that sometimes, but does it protect them enough? Because we don't, most time they do not express themselves. They don't express what really happened. Even if they do, they cannot capture it in the most lucid details that adults may be able to do. What can be done in such a situation? I think it's important that the law takes cognizance of that as well. Whilst we were discussing during the week 2, there was something that Karuna mentioned about delay in trials. That's one of the challenges that we face in delivering support. Delay in trials. For example, length of time that is needed to determine the case, process of processing the cases, disruption to court activities and all that, and then backlogs of cases. You have so many cases, you file a matter in court, and then because there are several cases, for example, during this coronavirus pandemic, when the court is no longer meeting physically, by the time you file an action, there are a number of cases that are already there, and the court will have to now, take them according to what time they came when they were filed. Is there a way that the system can be made much supportive of victims and survivors of domestic abuse, especially if life is at stake? How can delay in trials, delay in terms of length of determining the case, delay in terms of processing the case, delay in terms of disrupting court activities, and then backlogs, how can these things be addressed? Does anyone have ideas and suggestions that can help? All right. I think we've more or less understood the content. I assume that everything has been done so far from week 1 to the very last day has been so far understood. So that's a kind of summary of everything we have done so far on the legal surgery. And I hope that the contents have been enriching and that we can share. Let's make sure we share this content with our friends and people that we know. As you know, we have the recordings on our YouTube channel, so you could go back and rewatch them so that you can take notes if you've forgotten anything. So we'll have them on Time to Heal YouTube channel. You could subscribe to the channel and then you get updates. All the videos are there. And the idea is to reach out to those who need it, and then reach out to everyone who may need it. You yourself, when you have the knowledge on how to support, you are better positioned to support victims and survivors when you find yourself in that situation. So please, let's share these topics. Some of them are already on the Facebook of Time to Heal. The last 2 topics are there because we streamed it live on Facebook. So, but these ones will be on our YouTube channel, and please go back and rewatch. And then if you have any questions, if you've got any queries, the legal support team will be here to, as much as possible, answer the questions. So that concludes the surgery for today. If we do not have further questions or comments, then we will have to draw a curtain here for today. Does anyone still have 1 or 2 things to add? Okay, so but if you have questions later, please do get in touch with us. We will be happy, very much happy to answer them. And like, as you know, Time to Heal is a charity established to deliver support to victims and survivors of domestic abuse. Kamina, I think Kamina represents Women Alliance, I think, is that right? Yeah, so you can also reach out to her. As many as you can't get enough of support. So as or the avenue that you think that you can get support. If you're watching this video later on, or if you've been given the link later, please know that there is support always available in Time to Heal and around the city. So just a brief announcement. Like I mentioned earlier on, we'll be having international conference on violence against women. And the conference will be going on from the 11th to 14th. I think so. If you give me a second, I will bring up the flyer on our screen. And we just want to invite everyone to join us. It's a very important conference. And this year's conference, ICOVA, is tied to the Future Gem. We are looking at the role of the youth, how we can empower the youth and everything. They are the future generation. So that's the date, 11th to 14th of September. Please put the date on your diary. We would want everyone to attend. Invite your friends, everyone, and please register as well. I think the link would have been sent out, will be sent out very soon. So, and as a result of that, we are concentrating our preparation for the conference. So based on that, we will not be having a legal surgery next week and the following week for now, but will be replaced with something else, and we will have, there'll be time in the conference. I think one of the topics, the one on the electronic media, will be presented during the conference as well, and more aspects of it. So please join us, though the surgery will not be holding next Saturday and the following Saturday, but activities will be coming up. Please, this conference is loaded, and various speakers, rich speakers, will be coming across the world to speak in this conference. Share the flyer with your friends. We'll be distributing it on our Facebook channel and on our social media platform. Please, when you see it, share with your friends, and let's come and discuss, bring ideas on how to support our future gem. So that concludes the surgery for today. I want to say a special thank you on behalf of Time to Heal. Special thank you to our legal team members, Zara, Karuna, Zoe, Ting, Kieran, everyone. You guys have been amazing. Thank you so much for being instrumental to all the topics we've delivered, and everyone who has been joining us. Kamina, very faithfully, Tala, to everyone. Thank you so much for making this surgery success. And then we hope to see us back after 2 weeks, revived, rejuvenated.
You're very welcome.
So thank you very much, everyone. And I hope we enjoy our weekend. Have coffee, drink tea, and whatever makes you happy, please go and do it with social distancing measures in place. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.